And so we might have heard that Easter is derived from Ostara, this Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring. We see a depiction of her here on the left, Ostara. And that's where we get the title, the name, the word Easter comes from that. So we might have heard that, gosh, there was a time when there were lots of religions and Christianity was early and it was forming. And so naturally, it was going to incorporate some of the rituals, the rites, the holidays, the celebrations, and in some cases, take on some of the names of holidays that were already happening. So in this case, a pagan holiday. And there are other goddesses of fertility, of spring. So we have, Ostara being a derivative of the name Ishtar, the goddess Ishtar depicted in the center, a Babylonian and Assyrian goddess of love and fertility. So, it continues to go back and back and back when we really trace things. And again, there are so many goddesses of fertility. Diana, the chaste Diana. We have here the depiction on the right of an Armenian goddess, Anahit. And of course, she's shown often with the pomegranate, which is a symbol of fertility, a fruit full of seeds. It's all seeds. What do you eat of the pomegranate? The seeds. So it's a symbol of fertility. So this is a time, we're feeling it here, right? Spring has returned. Winter is finally ending. The blossoms are blooming. I know in our Seattle yard, the bunnies are starting to hop because we don't mow it very much, and I love that. But spring is springing. And at least in the Northern Hemisphere, this is a time when there's a lot of fertility, and it's natural to worship the Divine Mother, the Divine Feminine, Mother Gaia or Mother Earth. And so that naturally was happening because in ancient religions, there was a unity with the seasons. There was an understanding of the holy nature within seasons. It wasn't this separation of like religion and nature. Our life and nature over here, it was all one. It was together. So it was natural to introduce this new holiday and take on that name from Ishtar to Ostara to Easter at this time of spring and fertility. So we have here another depiction of Ostara holding the rabbit, because there's fruits full of seeds, but there's creatures full of fertility, and rabbits are known for that. So the rabbit has always been a symbol at this time. And of course, the egg. And so it was a pagan rite to hide eggs, for instance, as symbols of this fertility. So these are ancient symbols, ancient rites, ancient rituals that were done, that we still do to get today. And some Christians today, some born-again Christians will say, oh, I don't celebrate Easter because it was a pagan holiday. But none of this is meant, we're not here to debunk anything. It is to actually call out the unity and actually give more credence and truth to this holiday of Easter. It's bizarre to us that we, you go online and in our dualistic way of thinking, it's like, oh, for me to be right, something has to be wrong. People use it as though, oh, well, that debunks Christianity. And to us, it's like, wait, why would you look at it that way? It actually gives so much more credibility and beauty and history to the real deep meanings, the esotericism of this holiday and where it's coming from. So to us, it gives more into this, what is known as a Christian holiday. So historically, Christianity, like other classic religions, came to rectify, came to reform. And it's really not that Jesus of Nazareth came to establish Christianity. He came as a religion, as a form, but he came embodying and delivering and demanding, really, that the principles the Christic solar principles be known and be lived. And from that, because we're in a world of forms, we create the form of religion. I mean, that's only natural that a master, an avatar, a wise sage comes and delivers the principles of God. And because we're in a world of form, that is going to form and formulate into scriptures, into all the forms of religion that we have, into images of that master and his mother, and others involved in that, because we relate with form. And so from that, Christianity then became the form that it is. But it was really, really about the principles to be lived, that he came to wake people up to how they had fallen asleep to those principles. And so religion, which comes from religare, which means to reunite with one's true nature, with one's true self, is really an expression of those principles. And it has to be renewed again and again, because the nature of form is entropy. Forms decay. Forms get misunderstood through time, mistranslated through time. So they have to be renewed again and again. Hence why we need various religions at various times that display themselves in various forms. And yet when we really look into them, there is a unity among them. So they don't debunk each other. That's madness to see it that way. They don't discredit each other. They actually credit each other when we understand the principles. When we understand the principles. And really, Christianity, and really the Christ, Jesus, arrived at a pretty low point. That was a rough place, and literally a low point, right? The Dead Sea is the lowest place known on the planet, right? And so that area was like physically a low point, but also just a low point in what was going on in humanity at that time. And avatars, masters, they arrive to a place and a time when it's really needed. And so the master Samael of Vior, the master of this current modern Gnosis, has arrived in a place in the West at a time when it's really needed. And just as Master Jesus came at the beginning of the era of Pisces about 2,000 years ago, Master Samael comes at the beginning of the era of Aquarius, which is now, to remind us, to renew us, to bring the principles of what Christianity, of what Buddhism, of what Hinduism really, really is about. For us to be reminded in a language we can relate with examples we can relate with modern current scriptures. And so those books on the shelf over there are those modern current scriptures. The modern current Gnosticism, the current rectification, the current reminder of what it is to live those principles of religare, of religion, of reuniting with our being.
That was too.
All right, so Easter, timing. We've already talked about it in terms of spring, but there's like cosmic forces at play that create this particular timing. And Easter is on the first Sunday following the full moon, or the full moon after the spring equinox. And so the equinox is when the sun crosses the plane of the Earth's equator, and day and night are about equal. Day and night become equal. And in the northern hemisphere, this is when the sun begins to triumph over darkness. And so it is immediately following that, and this cross of the full moon and the sun overcoming, the pull of that lunar force that full moon always has such a lunar pull on us. And ask anybody who works in an emergency room or in the police force, that stuff happens on full moons. We get a little lunatic, lunar on full moons. And so there's that strong pull of this lunar nature. And though the moon reflects the sun, it's a dead planet. It's not the sun. And so the sun is now triumphing. The light, the sun, is triumphing. And ancient religions worshipped the sun in the sky as a deity, not out of ignorance, but out of intelligence. And we may worship an S-O-N sun, but it's the same, it's just a human embodiment of that same S-U-N sun. The solar force, the light, overcoming the darkness. And that's the whole invitation of Holy Week. So Holy Week is a time of birth and fertility, yes, but there is no birth without death. For the plant to emerge, the seed dies, dissolves, transforms. And so it's also then naturally a week to contemplate ourselves and to let go of that which doesn't serve our soul and to really contemplate about that. It's not all about, chocolate bunnies are great, but it's not all about that. There's something really deep to this holy day, to this holy week. Mm-hmm. So there's something called the holy sacrifice. And that word sacrifice can invoke interesting thoughts and feelings in people because of the way we have related with the word sacrifice. Likewise, karma. If I say karma, where do you go with that? Usually we've associated kind of negatively, like karma. Same with sacrifice. And yet, nothing new is born without a sacrifice. And who has ever really loved and cared for someone but never sacrificed anything for them or for that love and that care? There's always sacrifice. A couple of you are mothers. Along with that deepest love you could have as a human, is there not some sacrifice? From like day one, right? In utero, from the beginning. And so this holiday, and Gnosis in general, invites us to reconceive of what it means to sacrifice. That sacrifice is transformation. Like water to steam. Well, it's annihilation for the water, but it's beautiful. And a fire is annihilation for the wood. And a butterfly is annihilation for the chrysalis. But this is creation. And creation of something new requires a sacrifice, requires some sacrifice. And sacrifice in religion has been so misunderstood. This is what different masters have needed to come and say, what are y'all doing? Stop this. Sacrifice is not about sacrificing other people or creatures. It was always a symbolic internal sacrifice of our internal animals. The beasts that we have within are what we're always meant to be. But when we stop knowing and applying and knowing how to apply a work of inner sacrifice, and we start turning that natural need for sacrifice, because life requires sacrifice. again, the plant doesn't sprout without the seed sacrificing its form. The child isn't born without a sacrifice. Nothing happens in creation without sacrifices, transformations, transforming from one state to another, from one form to another. There must be sacrifice. And while there is simultaneous beauty and joy and awe, there's also some pain. And to want no pain is not realistic in life. To want zero pain just isn't realistic in creation, because there's always going to be a certain amount of pain, of sacrifice in creation. But that builds some grit, right? Builds that Swedish word sisu, of that, like that grit, that strength, builds backbone if we know how to relate with it. So sacrifice, to sacrifice our old concepts of sacrifice, to change it from one state to another. Not to the point of masochism, but to the point of accepting, oh yeah, for change to happen, positive change to happen, for growth to happen, for real evolution to happen, I'm going to have to let go of some things. There's going to be some sacrifices. And parts of me are going to be afraid of that. And fear shows up often as pain or sadness or anger. It's just fear of the unknown. The butterfly was comfortable being a worm. It couldn't know what was going to happen. I mean, to go from this to that, is a radical change. In some way, it must be scary, even though from the outside we're like, but you're becoming so beautiful. But from the inside, there's probably some pain in that, experienced in that. Uncertainty, yes, the path of uncertainty. So sacrifice. One of our teachers wrote about this holy sacrifice that's celebrated at Easter among Gnostics, among Christians. One of our teachers said that for creation and its fundamental 7 dimensions to exist, and in turn for the worlds and suns contained in it in creation also to live its cosmic days and nights, an immense holy sacrifice must be fulfilled within the absolute abstract space, within God, within the womb of God. And in order that this holy sacrifice in our world, earth, did not disappear completely, thus the advent of the Messiah, in this case Jesus, at a perfect mathematical time and space when the age of Pisces began 2,000 years before the arrival of the current era of Aquarius. So that Master Jesus comes so that sacrifice isn't lost. Like the real essence of intimate, choiceful, intended sacrifice doesn't get lost. That the Messiah had to come. In this case, not just any Messiah. In this case, coming to the physically and psychologically lowest point on the planet at such a time of degeneration. And people were being crucified all over. It was a low point, psychologically, energetically. And he didn't just come to kind of rectify that religion at that time, and that was it. This particular Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, came as a strong, deep, and never known before, never surpassed since embodiment of the solar force of God. Like that level of God to be embodied on this earth changed humanity, was such a sacrifice and a simultaneous display of love in action agape love in action, and also a physical living through what is an internal drama to live. When he was publicly and physically displaying the sacrifices that we need to do internally. And he spoke it, love your enemy. Forgive others. Forgive them their faults, because we have our own. Brotherly and sisterly love. Take care of each other. Love each other as I have loved you. And he spoke it and spoke it and spoke it and lived it. And then lived that drama of crucifixion, which is an internal drama for anybody deeply walking the path of self-realization. But he lived it physically and to a degree that changed the karma of our earth and our humanity in order to literally gift humanity. Like, that level of sacrifice gifted humanity more time, more freedom within the time that we have to self-realize. He brought a tremendous dharma to this humanity. It was an amazing sacrifice. So if we feel that sacrifice is a bad word, then we discount all the mothers in the planet, all the parents in the planet, all the butterflies, Jesus, and all the messiahs. We discount them. We say, I don't like sacrifice. That doesn't sound good. And what did they do all that for? Sacrifice is beautiful. It takes a lot of courage to sacrifice. It takes a lot of knowing. It takes a lot of definition. It takes a lot of faith to sacrifice. And we know this in our own ways. Because if you love anybody, you sacrifice for them. So you know this in your own way. It takes faith in that love to invest and to sacrifice. I think that's what's so heartbreaking about divorce, is that people, like, after maybe 20 years, invested so much faith, but we still have what we have inside, always. No matter if somebody dies, if there's a divorce, whatever happens, what did we cultivate inside as a human being through our sacrifice? Because sacrifice should ultimately elevate us, or there's a lack of internal sacrifice. If I'm sacrificing and feeling sorry for myself, if I'm sacrificing and generating anger and account taking and what I'm owed, this is not elevating myself. This is not sacrifice at all. So the sacrifice, the external sacrifice, always needs to be matched, weighted with internal sacrifice. Otherwise, we're just resentful. We feel sorry for ourselves. We tell our wailing stories about how much we've given up, for our kids or whatever. And that's not sacrifice. So we're talking about an emotional, a psychological sacrifice. So there's a death involved, isn't there? A death to the me that feels like I'm owed, like this should be even, I'm counting. There's got to be a death to that. Because unless we know our karmic history, we really don't know what we are owed and what we owe. And then the thing we in these studies, when we understand the principles of it, we put our trust and our faith in this amazing balancing law of karma, and another friendly law called affinity that's like, actually, it all relatively works out. Maybe not exactly today or yesterday, but in the end, it all works out to where what I'm attracted to, what's attracted to me, it's not by chance. It's not random. I have a relationship to those things.
It all works out in the end. If it's not working out, it's not over yet.
Right. That's right. And Easter really is it's a celebration of life. And that's often the phrase now, right? I don't hear from people as much. I'm going to a funeral. I'm going to a celebration of life. And yet they're going to celebrate the life of someone who has died. That life has been sacrificed. But it's a celebration of life. And Easter is a celebration of life, isn't it? Fertility and life. And yet a time of a very important person's death at the same time. And yet there's bunnies and candy and eggs and fun and children, and it's spring, and it's an interesting mix. So Christ, just as Easter has a history, this word Christ has a history coming from the word Christos, meaning fire or light. And this fire, this light, has been embodied by, I wouldn't say a lot of people on the scale of billions, but several. Let's say several. Mm-hmm. So we've got Romulus of Rome up in the right, who's born of a virgin priestess and hailed as a son of God. We've got Quetzalcoatl of Mexico there on the left. Odysseus of Greek mythology, a carpenter whose disciples were sailors. We have Mitra in the center. And Mitra's Vedic counterpart, Mitra, are believed to come from, Mitras meaning contract, agreement, related to a covenant, which are words, very Christian words, to mean a covenant, a contract, agreement. That this master came as an agreement to humanity. And that's what masters do. They sacrifice their lives out of that covenant, that agreement. Krishna, born from a virgin, also sacrificed similarly to Jesus, had a very, very similar story actually to Jesus. Zoroaster, also born of a virgin of immaculate conception from a ray of divine reason. So a similar incarnation. Word made flesh is what he was considered. So many, many similarities to these various carriers of Christos, or that solar fire, these various embodiments. And again, this is not to debunk Christianity in any way. It is to flesh out its history and its breadth and its depth. The name Yeshua, Jesus, is the four-lettered name of God with the shin, the fire, the solar fire in the middle. And he's always shown with this heart on fire, always teaching this path of love, of this teaching of sacrifice. And so you often see, sometimes the heart with the daggers in it, and, the crown of thorns with blood. And there's all these symbols of sacrifice. That's why in the beginning we hung on sacrifice for a little while. So I know that sometimes if you watch the movie, The Passion of Christ, and sometimes it can seem kind of gruesome. Well, it was. I think that was the director's point, was to show this is what it was really like. But this mixture of hearts and thorns and blood and love and pain and tears together, which it really isn't this macabre display of anguish, but it is to recognize that with love comes sacrifice, and that love and death are twins, that love and death do come together. And Yeshua means savior. So we are all each a carrier of Christos in potential. In that way, we all have this potential to awaken that fire. And it is the same as the fire of Kundalini spoken about in the East. That Christos fire is the creative sexual energy that we have. That is the containment of the light of the absolute abstract space that we have within us. Obviously, it's our creative force. I mean, it is the closest we can be to God is to create another human. But that force, that energy does not just create. It can create another human, but it also can create within ourselves, create a soul, create enlightenment to our minds, to our hearts. There's a lot of power and potency in that energy. And so that is the teaching that Christ came to give, but coded, cloaked. It wasn't a time to give it publicly, and now it is. So this master of modern Gnosis, Samael Aun Weor, comes to give us this teaching openly. What is this Christos force? And how do we touch it? How do we work with it? What do we do with that? And so we learn in these teachings to transmute that energy, first and foremost, to relax the vessel and transmute that energy, to respect, revere, and honor that energy, and to transmute that energy. Because we are a tree of life. We are the 7 dimensions, and we are a tree of life. And so we have this potential to light up that whole Christmas tree that we are of a tree of life with that Christos force. That is what it is to light the 7 candlesticks. The oil in the lamp symbol in different religious traditions is always that very substance, that very oil that we need to have, we need to revere, we need to honor, we need to know how to work with. So we're going to do a practice in a little while of transmutation, of mental relaxation in relation to the beginnings of Holy Week. And so Jesus really is a grand representation of all the Christs, of all these embodiers of that Christos force, and a supreme conciliator or mediator between divinity and humans. This communicator, this connector between divinity and humans. And isn't that how it is? Like when we read the words of masters and gain guidance, learning how to meditate, learning how to transmute, like we're talking about, learning the principles of religion, we're counting on them to bring divine word. Where do those mantras come from? From mediators between divinity and humanity that have that Christos force inside, that level of consciousness to be able to hear the mantras that are there. But can we perceive them? Clairaudiently, clairvoyantly, can we see? We need that Christos force enlivening and enlightening our minds, our emotions, our instincts, in order to be able to perceive that finally, the things that are already here. So he's a grand mediator. We're going to talk more about what this image means, because the one sleeping at the bottom is kind of us. we're in those lower parts of the tree related with the mental, the emotional, the vital, the physical, kind of sleepy, physically, energetically, or vitally, emotionally, mentally, to asleep. And we're here to learn how to wake that up using the will, reharnessing our willpower in order to awaken, instead of just using our willpower, that precious willpower of the soul, for life stuff. Yeah, we got to do the stuff in the things of life, but to pour all of our divinely given energy into my career, into making money, into looking this way, into going on vacations, into taking care of all the family, and doing all the things and all the gifts and all the stuff, all that beautiful sexual energy, creating beautiful things, a garden, a perfectly painted house, a yacht trip, a nice car, these shoes, staying in touch with everybody, having all these friends, all the stuff and the things, is just manifestation or outpouring of our sexual energy, which is that Christos. It's our fire in matter. And it's beautiful, and it's fun, and it's enjoyable. It's all the things of life. But when you die, that stuff remains out there, and you're a corpse. And what do you have as a soul? Because that physical death isn't it. It's not the end. And this is the wonderful thing about understanding transmigration of souls and living life to life. And we get into that in the Gnostic teachings. Like, well, what is the arc of that? Like, how many lives do we have? All that, there are answers. But we gotta don't just plan for retirement, like plan for your upcoming lives. It's much more than just retirement of this life. and we need some of that Christos, that fire, that light to remain inside. And nature, that lunar nature, wants to pull it all out of you. Nature's like, gimme, 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 all that sexual force I want to create, I mean, nature is a ceaseless painting artist, just wants to paint more color and make more stuff and keep cooking and doing and speaking and writing and making and creating. And if we are not mindful and I don't mean stingy and I don't mean stiff, but if we're not mindful about our energies, then the pull of nature is going to pull it all out of us. I mean, is anybody not experiencing that already? Really? I mean, life and nature, other people, it just parking, traffic, police,
How many vital people do you see on their deathbed? Like,
how many what?
Vital people on their deathbed, like, this is great. I've never felt so good. Sorry.
Not very many.
I can't think of one, but
not very many. So we learn how to conserve and transmute and respect and understand this fire, this Christos, Christic solar light that we have inside, and just begin to look at what's my relationship with life, with lunar life. Because spring is coming. The equinox will be crossed, and the sun can triumph. And if we don't go with that, then the consequences is that we lose all of our energy and our vitality. And we can create a lovely life with that. And it's not to demonize life, but it is to have a more temperate relationship, much more, because we've gone so far into matter that what feels like temperate, it's like, wow, you don't party all weekend and you don't have 5 million saved for retirement. Like what? Like we've gone so far that to actually be balanced seems like you're an extreme ascetic. To just be a balanced human being seems like you're kind of weird. That's pretty extreme. Like you don't drink, like you don't what? Like you don't do the things that people normally do. Seems extreme. It can seem really extreme. And so it's great to have a community of people also minding this energy and trying to have a more temperate relationship with life and internal life, and really devote to internal life. Because this is not a fantasy. This is not an idea. This is not cool. It's cool, but it's not just to be cool. This is real. Like this is our real lives. This is what it is to be human. Like this is why we're really here. So we can give it a week, Holy Week, to really devote every night, every morning to practices, to contemplating what's the meaning of all this. So let's get to that, shall we? Palm Sunday. So this coming Sunday is Palm Sunday. In that place, at that time in Jerusalem and in those areas, palms were a sign of peace and life. So palms, a celebration of life, laying down the palms for Jesus on his donkey to walk on into the city. And so Jesus came in, triumphantly, but on a humble donkey. And this was really confusing. There was a lot going on at the time, and the Jews were really persecuted and they were really suffering for a long, long time. And many of them were really hoping that the Messiah was coming to physical rebellion and a physical overcoming and a physical triumph to release them from their suffering, to overcome the Romans in a physical way. And this is not what Jesus came for. He came for the internal revolution. He came to be a king of our souls, not of our lives. And this was really confusing to a lot of people at the time, even to some of his disciples or followers at the time. So this was this symbolic, really, confusion of Judas, who felt confused, disappointed. Now, really, Judas was probably his highest disciple, and Jesus and Judas agreed that Judas was going to play this role and take on the hatred of millions forever for playing this role. But somebody had to play the role. Somebody had to be the betrayer, because what had to happen, what happened needed to happen. And somebody had to play that role. And it is, again, a public display. They both took it on. They both made that sacrifice, Judas included, so that we now here are talking about the depth of sacrifice and to reflect on betrayal. How do we betray our own Christos? In what ways have we committed that betrayal? So that Gnostics of then and now have these teachings and can reflect, because it's if it was just a mythology that was never lived, it kind of wouldn't have the same weight. I know for me, knowing that Judas really did that, man, I feel that. And it really kind of pushes on my heart to reflect on betrayal because of the sacrifice that Judas made. No sacrifice, no piercing of the heart in me right now, and hopefully in many, many others. So if you want to hear more about that, pick up the Gospel of Judas. Pick up the Gospel of Judas. It's teeny weeny because not a lot of it existed, and even less of it survived through time.
Nicely put. Well put.
Yeah. So he walks in this humble way on a donkey, not on some white steed, not on some big horse, but on a donkey. And the donkey is the symbol of the mind, the stubborn mind, isn't it? Isn't it? Wants to keep thinking, staying stubborn, staying the same, doesn't want to change. So the donkey is the mind, and the Christ, the Christos, is the force that we need. We need that transmuted force. We need to meditate in order to command the donkey. I don't know if you've ever, I lived in Texas. Yeah, I got bucked off of a donkey when I was 6. Who didn't? They are wild, kind of silly, stubborn animals, and they don't like gates being shut behind their butts. Yes. A donkey is not impressive as an animal. It's really not. And that's the symbol of our mind, our thinking mind, our donkey mind, our donkey mind. So he rides in like that, and people sing his praises, shout his praises. Our Savior is here. Hosanna in the highest. Come on in. Palms of life and peace laid down for you, welcoming him in. All the while he knows what's going to happen. But this is the triumph of willpower, because he's walking towards his crucifixion and he knows it, and that is willpower. And that is what we all must do, walk towards our sacrifice. I'm going to state my boundary that is temperance in my life in order to reserve some of this Christos for myself. I'm going to go on this retreat instead of go help my parents, though they would like for me to come help them. or I'm going to forego budget for vacations in order to have some budget for retreats in some cases. We're going to like move towards the sacrifices that we need to move towards. I'm going to not say that thing when I'm angry anymore. I'm not going to give voice to my self-sympathy anymore to move towards the sacrifice. That's willpower. It takes a lot of willpower. It really does. So that's riding on the donkey. So Holy Monday. He is cleansed and blessed with the spikenard that we were burning as an incense, but spikenard oil. And it's debated which Mary, but we honor it as Mary Magdalene was the one, and we consider Mary Magdalene the wife of Jesus. Rabbis had wives. It wasn't a rabbi without a wife. You're not a rabbi without a wife. And everybody called Jesus rabbi. And he had this wife in Mary Magdalene. She was not a prostitute. That was a symbol. And so they did the alchemical work together. They did the Gnostic work together because he needed that in order to develop his soul, in order to work directly with that Christos energy, which they both did. That is the salvific or saving force. And so she's symbolically in preparation and in honor for what he's going towards, this ultimate sacrifice, anoints him with this very precious oil. And Judas, symbolically again, criticizes her, said, that's worth a year of wages. Why isn't this being sold and given to the poor? And Jesus says, leave her alone. This is an honoring act. This is a special moment. You won't have the living Christ with you for very long. Then on the way, so this is at Lazarus's house where this happens outside of the city walls. And then on the way back into Jerusalem, he passes a fruitless fig tree. And the fig, like the pomegranate, full of seeds, right? That's why I think a lot of people don't like it, because it's just like, oh, this is just a bunch of seeds.
But Newton liked them.
Newton loved them. I like figs. So these, sometimes they're a little bland, but when they're sweet, they're really sweet. And so it's another symbol of fertility. The fig full of seeds, and there was no fertility, there was no life force in this fig tree. So it's a tree of life without the Christos inside, without the transmuted sexual energy, and he curses that tree. Later on, he preaches near that tree, but it's a symbol of, the tree of life must be lit with that Christos energy. We need to conserve and transmute that energy. Then also on Holy Monday, this is when you might have heard of Jesus. It's like the one place where it seems like he gets mad. What happened? Like he can be angry? That's confusing. But we can utilize energy and force, and we can moderate our voices on purpose. It doesn't have to be animated by an ego of anger. But in that moment, and it's symbolically, he's chasing out the den of thieves from within himself. And we need to be defined. We need to not feel sorry for our egos. Sometimes they come to us in dreams as a friend, as an old friend. Watch those dreams when you have like a high school friend show up, and remember that and jot it down and go, okay, who is that for me? Who is that? Who do I befriend? So we've got these friends inside of our psychology and our psyche. Some of them are not really friends. They're old egos that we feel friendly with. You help me get through this, you help me feel better about myself when somebody's mad at me and upset. Self-sympathy comes in, like my friend, or anger. It's a powerful friend we might have. These are not friends. So he's driving out these thieves and money changers from within himself, but he's displaying it publicly as well, because he's also there to really rectify what the heck is going on in Jerusalem and with the religion and the people at that time. So it's amazing. It's amazing cosmic coordination to publicly live a process and internally go through that process at the same time. Like, that's pretty good theatrical choreography. That's pretty good choreography, divinity. But that's what Jesus did. That's what's so amazing about this drama. He says to them, the scriptures declare, my temple will be a house of prayer, but you have turned it into a den of thieves. And he's talking to himself. That whip is the whip of willpower. That willpower that we need to apply to ourselves. Again, not to the extreme of masochism, but to be pretty defined. Like, anger, what are you really doing for me? What do you do for my heart health, anger? What do you actually literally do for me, anger? Yeah, you help me get things done. At what cost to my relationships and my health and my integrity? What's the price of these friends? How expensive are these friends to our health and to our relationships and to our authenticity, to our spirituality? So we need to be defined about them. So let's take a little break right now, maybe about 7 minutes till quarter past, and then we're going to come back and do a practice in relation to what we've been talking about so far. So settling into a posture for about a 15-minute practice, maybe 20 minutes. So whatever posture you can be in where you can stay pretty comfortable for that amount of time. And you can close your eyes, or you can have your eyes just softly gazing at a non-distracting spot before you. And then you want to notice just the depth and the quality of your breathing, and let each breath reach down more fully into your lungs. Let those inhales reach down towards your belly and relax your abdomen. Relax the whole core of your body. Relax your face, your shoulders, your arms and hands, your legs and feet. Let your exhales be complete to their end. When we relax, we exercise authentic willpower. The willpower in the hands of the personality and the ego create tension. And that creates pain. And that is not the sacrifice that we're looking for. So we can sacrifice our tension, sacrifice the control that the false personality has over your body by relaxing. Letting go of all that selfness in the face and just let your face relax. Letting go of all that selfness in your shoulders and let them drop. All that selfness in your abdomen and let go of that tension that you're holding. And let yourself breathe more freely with open lungs, relaxed abdomen, relaxed body. A relaxed body and a free-flowing, complete breath becomes like a magic carpet that we ride on our meditation. And this is willpower. This is why we call willpower willingness, a willingness to let go of that which we're grasping. That thought, that memory, that thing I want to think about or plan. And we are willing and have the will to let go of that thinking mind. Because a mind that obsesses is not authentic willpower. It's actually out of control. It's not willpower. So be willing to let go of the thinking mind. Be willing to let go of your plans for a few minutes. Be willing to let go of memory and fantasy. Be willing to let go of concepts, opinions, theories, distractions, drifting, preoccupations. Be willing to let go of all that. Those are add-ons to your essential true nature. And you can let go of them one by one, group by group, little by little, made much easier when your body is relaxed and your breath is smooth and deep. And you might notice the mind is stubborn and it wants to think again, wants to remember, wants to stay concrete in matter. And you continue to breathe and relax. That is to ride the donkey, to put the will in charge. The Christ is the will. To put the hue, the spirit, in front of the mind, the manas, the human. All you need to do is breathe well and relax. That is all there is to do. Everything else is to not do right now. In this way, we generate peace inside, a capacity to hold peace inside, regardless of the sounds on Broadway or in your home, any uncomfortable sensation you might feel. You can breathe well and relax anyway. And as you do this, you build willpower to be able to contain and maintain all of the Christic values, like peace, like serenity, like patience. This is a wonderful practice For your Palm Sunday and your Holy Monday, relax and breathe well. Take command of the donkey of the mind with willingness, a firm yet gentle willingness. And you might notice thieves trying to steal your attention from within you, preoccupations. And you apply your willpower to say, not now, not here, not in this holy space. This is not time and place for you. And now let us move this smooth breathing into a practice of transmutation, transforming one state to another, one substance to another, transmitting, transferring to travel, trans, from one space to another within ourselves. So, for those who are familiar with Hamsa transmutation, go ahead at your own pace as I talk through for those who are new to Hamsa transmutation. That in this practice, we use our intended, our will-powered imagination on purpose, not a fantasy, but a directed by the will, by the conscious will, directed imagination to see energy as light, perhaps as color, at the very bottom base of the spine. And imagine that light, we might see it as red and blue intertwining lights or serpents, intertwine up the spine. And as you see this, inhale, and the silent mantra is hum, H-A-M, to help your transmutation. Going all the way up the spine on the inhale and pausing between the eyebrows. And the exhale is a verbal S-A-H, sa, into the heart. And then after that sa, just let the rest of your exhale trail out until you're empty and begin again at the base of the spine. Inhaling hum, exhaling sa. Cycling this Christos light, this precious force, light, and substance of the Absolute from the base of your spine, up your spine, enlivening the space between your eyebrows related with third eye Ajna chakra and delivering it into your heart ultimately. We transmute that creative energy into the energy of the heart: compassion, love, patience, serenity, generosity, and all the virtues and values of the Christ. So, so, so. At any time, you can pause and just go back to your normal way of breathing, but deeper, longer, slower. Also, revisit your face and your body to re relax if you've gathered any tension. So, now, letting go of the transmutation practice, staying just in your heart for a few more breaths. And from this central place of awareness, your heart, notice how you feel emotionally, physically, and notice your state of mind. And notice there's a difference between thinking about your state and your body and just observing and being a witness, an observer, an experiencer of your state and your body. And let's gradually come out of this practice with a few nice deep inhales, exhaling through the mouth or the nose. Another nice deep inhale. And exhale. And one more. So it's a practice we'd recommend for Palm Sunday, Holy Monday, early in Holy Week. Holy Tuesday, that's when Jesus returns to a fig tree and talks about faith. He talks about faith, he gives some of the teachings. And this is also when the Pharisees, the minds of belief, the religious people of the time, but they're stuck in dogmas and beliefs. They have a mental religion and a religion of forms, a degenerated form of religion that Jesus came to speak very boldly against, which is why they wanted him dead. And he said to them, outwardly, you look like righteous people, but inwardly, your hearts are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness. And again, he's always conjuring himself at the same time as conjuring or criticizing anybody else. Master Samael the same, always conjuring ourselves. It's important that we're not just outwardly criticizing, but we're seeing, and how do I do that? Because we're not here to make things right. We're here to develop comprehension and compassion. And so when I have a criticism, I can also recognize, I do something like that or equal to that, or I do that in my own way. It's important that we're comprehending that at the same time. That is to be comprehensive. That is to really embrace the Christic path. That is to sacrifice my self-righteousness and my pride, sacrifice those things and move towards that sacrifice inside myself. So anytime I have a criticism of something or someone, say it or don't say it. Maybe it's your job. I don't know. Maybe your job is to correct things at the, movie critic. Sure, whatever. Maybe so. Okay, do your job if that's your job. But at the same time, look inside. That's the most important part we can do. So he was saying that the Pharisees not only block the way for themselves, but they block the way for others as well. And that's what incomplete religion does. Because it leaves people wanting for more and being told there's not more, just because we don't know it. Or the more threatens the forms that we've developed here and our sense of power. And so that's what he was confronting. It's like you prevent even religious people from knowing God. That's horrible. But that's what the form of religion generally becomes. So that's when, of course, they set themselves determinately against him on Holy Tuesday. Said, yeah, he's got to go. Definitively against them, and started to look for an internal collaborator that they did find in Judas. And so Judas then does what Jesus asks him to do as part of this process and goes and collaborates with the Pharisees and receives 30 pieces of silver, the three brains, betraying the Christ, the Christos force in the mind, in the heart, and in the vitality, in the sexuality. So it's that triple betrayal that we commit. And that's those 30 pieces of silver. And then comes Silent Wednesday, Holy Wednesday. It's a time of repose. So Holy Tuesday is a good time to reflect on, what do I criticize? How do I betray? And how can I look inside? Be a little more insightful whenever I have a criticism or whenever I betray, right? Yes. And Holy Wednesday is a time for repose. It's a time for preparation. It's a time between all this activity and what's to come next. So it's called Silent Wednesday. And this is a night sometimes when in churches the candles will be lit and it will be a time of silence, of repose. So next Wednesday, some of us will be together in the usual Wednesday group, but we'll treat it as a Holy Wednesday. Maybe light a candle in the darkness that night and just sit in the silence, in that preparation, in that repose. And then, of course, we have Holy Thursday, and this commemorates the Last Supper. Jesus and all of his disciples that represent parts of our own being. All those disciples were very intentional. There's a whole deep teaching. The Gnostic Bible is the Pistis Sophia unveiled. And it goes deeply into the teachings of Jesus after his resurrection. And he talks about, he has relationship with, rather, these parts of the being. Because we, as Jesus demonstrated, need to reunite all the disparate parts of our being that have been scattered asunder through desire and distractions, and recollect, remember our being. Recollect, recall, remember, bring back together all those dispersed parts of ourselves. Because the ego splinters, the ego divides. Desire and attachment divide and splinter. The consciousness brings back, unifies, sees the this and that, sees the myself in the criticism I'm delivering, can unify. The consciousness is what can do that. The ego is always different. That's why when you go online about, like I was saying earlier, to talk about those pagan roots of the word Easter is not to divide. That's an egotistical view of things. The consciousness is what unifies. So this unification, this dinner, and the commemoration, the Holy Eucharist comes from this. And so the Eucharist that's celebrated, the bread and the wine, is this remembering of this great sacrifice that I talked about earlier, how this Messiah came literally to infuse, there was actual blood in the chalice of the Christ and the disciples. It really was a blood pact for all of humanity, because karma is shared in the blood. Blood brotherhood is a real thing. You're sharing karma with someone you share blood with. Consider that when it comes to donating blood, by the way, that whomever you share blood with, you are directly sharing karma with. Blood pacts are real. So just be aware of that. And I know that's one of those things like, well, that's one of those radical ascetic things you were talking about. Now I can't be a blood donor. It's up to you. It's just something to consider, that you're sharing karma with somebody who knows who, right? Also, through sexual fluids, karma is shared. Consider that. Be really mindful. Do you want to share karma? Do you want to karmically link with anybody you've ever slept with?
Is beautiful enough.
What?
Is beautiful just
right.
enough. Like,
right.
How many times do people think, like, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or they're kind of a pig, but
right.
You're mixing.
Yes, mixing. So the Last Supper, this unction of bread and wine, this sacrifice that is made. And this is the pact with humanity that I was talking about earlier. Literally an outpouring of Dharma, of the disciples and Jesus for humanity, that made a change, that made a palpable change for humanity. And so this pact was made, a sacrifice was made. And all the while, Jesus knows what is coming. And so after that Last Supper, he goes from the Garden of Gethsemane to the Mount of Olives, which is just raising to a higher level of consciousness. We experience that a little bit, maybe in that meditation, when I relax, ride the donkey mind, I get on top of the donkey. It's not fun to have a donkey on top of you, really. It's really not. So I write that as much as I can, and I experience a higher state. And so the Mount of Olives is him going to the causal realm and above, just a higher state in the tree of life. Meanwhile, The disciples who came with him keep falling asleep. And they fall asleep how many times? 3. In the mind, in the emotions, in the sex. And those 3 disciples represent the mind, the emotions, and the vitality or the sexuality that keep falling asleep. And Jesus comes back and says, can't you guys stay awake for just 1 hour and pray with me? And this is where that phrase, has anybody heard the phrase, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak? This is where that phrase comes from. He says that. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. It's full of entropy. It's matter. And so we have to keep transmuting. We have to keep meditating. We need the practices, because the body is heavy. It wants to fall asleep. The mind wants to get distracted and fall asleep into thoughts and fantasies and all that it does. The emotions want to fall asleep into self-consideration, into poor meism or anger or irritability or whatever mood can take us out of the moment, out of the richness of the alive moment and away from our will. So that is the 3 brains falling asleep. That's what the disciples are representing there. And this is why Jeff artistically put them crashed out at the bottom of the tree of life, where all this heaviness is happening.
Well, the art was there. I just put the tree of life.
You put the tree of life there. So the first traitor, Judas, the traitor of the sensorial mind, the traitor of desire. And so to symbolize that, he tells the soldiers, the one I kiss, a sensation, a sensorial symbol. The one I kiss is Jesus, because Jesus could kind of transfigure, and he didn't always look the same. And so they weren't sure, well, which one is he? It's dark. We're not sure. So Judas goes and kisses Jesus to symbolize that betrayal of desire, that our attachment, our sensorial desire, our lust for pleasant sensations, our total aversion of unpleasant sensations betrays our willpower. We become slaves of our sensations. We become slaves of that sensorial desire. So that's what that's symbolizing, because the Christ cannot thrive in such an environment where I'm just a slave to my desires. The Christ cannot thrive there. That light cannot be there, persistently anyway. So that's the first traitor, the first betrayal that night. And then the second traitor or betrayer is ill will, negative emotions, the high priest Caiaphas. So the religious high priest, who's, depicted when you see him in movies or in art, it's like passionate, and it's said that he tore his clothing at his chest and just said, I can't stand you. I can't take this, and just like ripped at the area of the emotional center and opened that just furiously. He was so angry about Jesus and so upset and so passionate. So displaying this traitor of ill will, of hatred, of passionate emotion. And the Christ inside of us can't thrive in that kind of environment, this like impetuous, stompy, angry, passionate, lustful, emotional. It can't thrive, can it? And so we learn, like a practice like we did earlier, relax anyway. Even though your worst pet peeve is happening right in front of you, like relax anyway. Even though that, I wasn't talking about you.
I smell that Claudia. Claudia's smiling.
People get it. But can we breathe well? Can we relax in the face of things? And little by little, we get on top of the donkey. We want it to happen all at once. We want it to happen like a magic trick. Like I'm just better. I'm just not angry anymore. And it happens moment by moment. It happens instant by instant. It happens transmutation by transmutation, day after day. That's how it happens. We transform by choice. If it was super fast, well, it wouldn't be our free will, would it? It would just like happen to us. And just like nobody made me angry, nobody's going to make me happy either. I've got to work on it because I have free will. It's God-given free will. And it feels so good when we choose through free will to be free. Man, that feels really good. Feels really good. Feels powerful, but not in the way of anger. It just feels grounded. And like you have a strength inside that nobody can take from you. And you know that. That's real confidence that we build through this work by overcoming that traitor, Caiaphas, inside of us. And look at Jesus's in this art, the serenity, you know, the disgust and hatred of Caiaphas, but the serenity of the Christ. And then there's the demon of the mind, represented by Pilate. So the government, the government leader, of course, is going to represent the traitor of the mind that betrays us, the thinking mind, the conjecturing, the skepticism in the mind. Well, what if, if the word Easter comes from pagan and Christianity's not real and none of this is real. What was that movie, The Zeitgeist or something? Man, that was just insanity. Where it's just like using all of the similarities of religion to try to debunk the whole thing. And we were watching it going like, this is so great. I'm so glad we did all this research. How could they come to that conclusion? And it's the pilot that we have, not pilot, like flight pilot, but Pilate, pilot, who that phrase of, you've ever heard of washing your hands of something? Yeah. That's where it comes from. Because ultimately Pilate said, hey, the people chose. They didn't choose to free Jesus. They chose to free Barabbas, who, by the way, was the physical revolution rebel of the time. So the people said, yeah, the guy we put the palms down for last Sunday, actually, we thought he was going to do something physically for us. And now that we know he's not, we want Barabbas back because he's going to at least fight a physical war for us. And that I can relate to.
He killed some people, but
Yeah. Yeah. So Pilate said, hey, you all chose Barabbas. It's out of my hands. I wash my hands of it. It's not my fault. The self-justifying mind. It doesn't take responsibility. It doesn't face things. It just justifies, makes theories. Have you ever done anything secretly that you knew you did wrong? You're not talking to anybody about it, but you're talking to yourself about it. Here's the story I'm going to tell if anybody asks me. You never have that conversation. It's total fantasy. It's just so weird, what the mind does. And that's Pilate. That's the betraying mind. Dishonest, skeptical, faithless, fearful, always thinking, distracted, out of the moment, preoccupied, planning, remembering. That's Pilate, the mind, that traitor of the mind. And we need to observe our mind. And meditation, like we were doing earlier, a meditation session is a great opportunity to observe what is going on in my own mind. And how can I get on that donkey and hold the reins, my breath, my relaxation. Keep going. Don't give up. Week after week, month after month. And that's how we learn to command the mind. Empowered by that transmutation, by that Christos, that fire that we have inside. This is Pilate. His head towards the spear of the mind.
I did a little work on that one.
Yeah, you did.
I did a little work on that one.
Asking the people, do you want to free Jesus? And when Pilate asked Jesus, what is the truth? Stand up for yourself, say something. Jesus remained silent, knowing that the mind doesn't really want to know the truth. The mind just wants to keep thinking. But the thinking mind cannot know the truth. We can think about something, but we can't know it with the mind. Only the consciousness. And so the consciousness, the being remains silence. So go into silence in this. And we're into the morning of Holy Friday. And so he's condemned. And he has to pick up his cross and carry it. And that is what Gnosis invites us to do. It says, what is your cross? What are you here to die to? What do you need to let go of? How are you going to overcome these three traitors inside of yourself? What do you need to sacrifice? That's your cross. And indeed, in this life, we got to carry that cross. We've got to carry that cross of temperance with how much energy we pour outward into lunar-led life for the sake of a solar birth inside. We got to set those boundaries with people that are just all about life and would like us to be too. That's kind of a part of our cross to carry. And those sacrifices, I don't get to just justify being angry and righteous anymore. I mean, all of that is, we have so much ego that is kind of painful to let go of that. I mean, imagine if all of a sudden, I mean, it would be wonderful, but you had no anger to help you get anything done or tell people when they're crossing your boundaries. You had no vanity to make sure you like fit in. You just all that went away. I mean, if it all went away all of a sudden, we would just flip out. Like we couldn't take it. So little by little, we sacrifice that. And that's our cross to carry. That's our cross to carry. Now, Jesus was carrying a much heavier cross because he was carrying the weight of that cross was the karma of humanity. That's why his cross is so massive. It's displayed. Who could carry that? And he had help to carry that along the way. Some other time we'll go into practice about the Via Dolorosa, the 14 stations of the cross, all of that has tremendous meaning. And sometimes we do practice in that way in great detail, and it's wonderful. And ultimately, he is crucified willingly. That's how strong his will was, because certainly he had the power to prevent that, and he did not. And he preached from that cross, forgive, forgive. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And so ultimately, he went out with that message of ultimate forgiveness and love. And ultimately, from that place, you can see here, oh, by the way, at the foot of the cross, oftentimes you'll see in art Mary wearing blue and John the disciple wearing red. Ida and Pingala. The two Kundalini serpents of Ida and Pingala are at the base of the spine that is this cross.
And often you'll see them on the opposite sides.
Yes.
This one's...
It's amazing. And Mary Magdalene, his wife, at the foot of the cross.
In gold, often.
In gold. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's an amazing tuck in to the art that is done repeatedly. I mean, it's so repeated that this is very intentional. It's clearly very intentional, and it's an alchemical teaching. And then the women go to, and in this image, he's already gone from the tomb, but these are the women that on Holy Saturday go to anoint the body. And because those are rites, those are burial rites. And they anoint him. And in that time, Jesus is descending into his own inner subconsciousness, his own abyss. So Holy Saturday is a time when we can meditate and continue to go inside and take accountability for ourselves. Maybe do a retrospection of the week, like, when did I say something that wasn't really true or wasn't really kind? Maybe it was even mean to myself or somebody else this week, but take account. On Holy Saturday, that's a time to go inside and take accountability and to sacrifice that meanness or that lie or whatever it is that we've done. And from that abyss, coming out of that abyss and that inner work is a resurrection. Because again, something dies in order for something new to be created, to be born. And so that's why Easter Sunday, the resurrection of the Christ, the completion of the work of self-realization that we'll unpack, in many, many classes for those who are newer. Like, what does this really mean? We're going to definitely unpack that. We've talked about it today in a way that we can maybe relate to in our own work, because it is relatable. And it's also much beyond that as well, in terms of the path of Christification And we do teach that in these teachings, but we want everybody to take away a way of working next week. So walking from Palm Sunday to Holy Monday, self-observing, reflecting, relaxing anyway, creating peace, getting on top of the donkey of your mind through the week. Holy Wednesday, a time of repose and silence. And then into Holy Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a time of more sacrifice, inner reflection. What do I want to die to? What do I want to give up so that something new can emerge? And then Sundays celebrating that work. So you can take this through the whole week next week on your own and plant throughout your week these practices and come out, somewhat renewed at the end of that week. So please treat the week as a retreat. Even though you're going to be going to work and doing what you do, but treat it also as a retreat for yourself, Holy Week.